21 years ago this week on May 21st, 2000, WWE held its Judgment Day pay-per-view from Freedom Hall in Louisville, Kentucky, featuring two excellent matches and the return of The Undertaker as the American Badass. Chris Benoit retained his Intercontinental title over Chris Jericho in a submission match. And Triple H beat The Rock 6 falls to 5 in a 60-minute Iron Man match to win the WWE Championship. This is my favorite of all the Iron Man matches that WWE has ever done. This was non-stop action with a hot crowd and a memorable finish, even if it was botched. Undertaker had been out since September after healing up from a groin injury and then a pec tear that he suffered in January when he was about to come back. That was an accident lifting in the gym when Crush, Bryan Adams, who was supposed to be his spotter, wasn't paying attention. He was chatting with somebody else, not realizing that this weight had fallen on Undertaker's chest. So that delayed his return by a few months, and maybe if he comes back in January and not May, maybe there is no American Badass. We may never know. But he rode down to the ring on a motorcycle to Kid Rock's American Badass with about a minute left in the match. He got in the ring, he wiped out all the members of the McMahon-Helmsley regime. People went nuts for this. They forgot all about the countdown clock. Nobody was counting down. They were so into The Undertaker. He chokeslammed Triple H before the time expired, which Shawn Michaels, the guest referee, did see. He apparently was not supposed to see that, but he was staring right at it. But there were 4 seconds left on the clock, and somebody in the truck had the smarts to take the clock off the screen. But another 6 seconds or so went by with Undertaker scooping up Triple H for the tombstone. Then the buzzer went off right before he hit the pile driver. Then he dropped him. Then Shawn Michaels called for the bell. They clearly ran out of time. The original finish, per the Wrestling Observer at the time, was to have been Rock just having enough time to crawl over to try to make the cover, but then time would run out on him before the referee counts 3. Which, if that happened, Rock, as the champion, should have retained the title by the rules, if they were all knotted up at 5 falls apiece. So I don't know how they would have explained that one, if maybe Rock was supposed to actually retain. I don't know. Michaels awarded Triple H the decisive fall by DQ on outside interference by The Undertaker. Despite the fuck-up on the timing, this was chaos. I loved everything about this. 20 years ago this week, on May 21st, 2001, one of the greatest matches in Monday Night Raw history aired, and it sucks that it will never be talked about again. It is lost to history when Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit beat Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H to win the WWE Tag Team Championship. This was the match where Triple H, in breaking up the walls of Jericho on Austin, tore his quad muscle in his leg, which is an excruciatingly painful injury. He gutted out the remaining minutes of the match, including being put in the walls of Jericho on the announce desk. And then after an errant sledgehammer shot to Austin, he got tackled to the floor. Austin was pinned. This came after Triple H lost on television to Jeff Hardy. He lost to Kane at the Judgment Day pay-per-view the night before. He lost his IC title. Clearly, they were building to a breakup of the two-man power trip, because they went from having all the titles to only Austin having a title. And I don't know if the plan was for Triple H to go babyface right away and challenge Austin for the title at the King of the Ring, or if they would have held off for SummerSlam, but that was the plan, for Triple H to go babyface and to challenge Steve Austin for the championship. It was not originally for Jericho and Benoit to challenge Austin for the title, which is what they were forced into. You know, Triple H going down really screwed up their plans, and he ended up missing that entire WCW invasion period. It was bad, you know. They turned Austin heel at the same time, and that did a number on business and ratings. So they turned him heel at the same time they knew Rock was going off to Hollywood for a few months to film a movie. It's like, well, we'll turn Austin heel, but at least we have Rock. No, they knew Rock was going away. And then once Triple H got hurt, they had already played the Undertaker and Kane card the month prior, So Jericho and Benoit were all they had left. It put them in a real hole in terms of top babyfaces. 19 years ago this week, on May 19, 2002, the first pay-per-view under the WWE initials, Judgment Day, saw Stone Cold beat Ric Flair and Big Show in a handicap match, which would be his final pay-per-view match until the following February. A little over a week after this show, Austin called into WWE's Byte This internet show and was a little too honest about what he thought of WWE creative at that time. Kevin Kelly brought up the quote-unquote internet rumors at the time that Austin was unhappy with the company, expecting Austin to debunk the rumors and put them to rest. But instead, Austin did just the opposite and fanned the flames, saying that the bottom line is that everything sucks. He said he's not happy with the direction that he or the company is going. The writing has been piss poor, and he thinks it could be a hell of a lot better, but it's been pretty shitty. He hasn't been happy since before WrestleMania. Kevin Kelly asked if he thinks changes will be made to improve things, and Austin said who knows, he's still happy to be part of the company, but creative could be a hell of a lot better than it is. Can we just take that Austin quote and just transplant it here into the year 2021? Because I think that you could argue the same would apply even today, at least on the Monday Night Raw side. Not surprisingly, days after this, Austin is booked to lose to Brock Lesnar in a King of the Ring qualifying match on Raw, and instead he walks out on the company. But also on this Judgment Day pay-per-view, Edge beat Kurt Angle in a hair versus hair match and shaved what was left of Kurt's hair off in an excellent match. I think this was the match that really put Edge on the map as a singles player. They had a really good match the month before at Backlash, but I thought this one was much better. Well, not much better, but it was better. Triple H beat Chris Jericho in a Hell in a Cell match that saw referee Tim White take a bump into the side of the cage and suffer a dislocated shoulder. It was serious enough that he did not referee another match until WrestleMania 20, 2 years later. And it was on the final 3 count of that match between Chris Jericho and Christian at WrestleMania that the same shoulder went out on him again. And that ended his officiating career. He never refereed another match again. And Undertaker won the undisputed title from Hulk Hogan in a terrible main event, ending Hogan's 1-month nostalgia run with the belt. There was a chokeslam spot in this match that is so bad, you really need to just see it for yourself. 18 years ago this week, on May 18, 2003, after 7 months of being inactive after it was unified with the World Heavyweight Championship the previous October, that was when Triple H beat Kane during the Reign of Terror. The Intercontinental title was reinstated in May of 2003, and a new champion was crowned in a Battle Royal on the Judgment Day pay-per-view, with Christian last eliminating Booker T to win the title. They never should have been unified in the first place. Mr. America beat Roddy Piper, who was fired the following month after an HBO Real Sports, I should say, interview aired that had been taped months earlier, and it did not paint WWE in a very positive light. So he did the interview, then he got rehired by WWE. This was the run with him and Sean O'Hare. And then once the interview actually aired, they saw it and they said, "You're out of here." And Brock Lesnar retained his WWE title over Big Show in a stretcher match. This was my favorite of all the matches those two had. I thought they made good use of the stipulation. And this was a really good match. 15 years ago this week, on May 19th, 2006, WWE's first theatrical film, See No Evil, starring Kane as serial killer Jacob Goodnight, was released. He was a serial killer who collected eyeballs from his victims. One critic called it just your basic slasher fare where a horde of horny teens riddled with contemptuous attitude wind up in the lair of an axe-happy psycho. You say that like that's a bad thing. The movie may have been no good, but the marketing on WWE television was quite clever, incorporating the May 19th date into Kane's storyline, where the mere mention of the date would just set him off into a fit of rage. 15 years later, look, people still remember May 19th. They still joke about it every year. It's Happy May 19th Day. The movie made $18 million on an $8 million budget, so it turned a profit at least, and went on to make an astounding $45 million in DVD sales in just 7 weeks. This eventually led to a direct-to-DVD sequel many years later, the aptly titled See No Evil 2, starring Kane and the new Scream Queen herself, the lovely Danielle Harris, a favorite of mine. I met her at a Q&A she did once for a screening of the movie Hatchet 2. 11 years ago, on the May 17, 2010 episode of Monday Night Raw from Toronto, Bret the Hitman Hart defeated The Miz with the sharpshooter in a no disqualification match to win the WWE United States Championship. He took no bumps. He had some help from the Hart Dynasty. This would be Bret's first title, and I believe his last, since winning the WCW title in 1999 and having to forfeit the title due to injury, which then led to his retirement. I love it. One last title win for Bret in Canada. A week later, after being appointed the new general manager of Raw, his first act was to vacate the U.S. title, so he was never beaten for it. He was never beaten for the title. 10 years ago this week, on May 21st, 2011, Sinclair Broadcast Group purchased 100% of Ring of Honor from Carrie Silkin. Sinclair at the time served 58 television stations in 35 markets across the country. Today, it's 193 stations in over 100 markets, making them the second largest television station operator in the United States. The announcement stated that their current front office staff, including Silkin, Sid Ike, and Ross Abrams, would remain with ROH, while Hunter Johnston, Delirious, would handle matchmaking, and Jim Cornette would remain as executive producer in charge of talent and sharing matchmaking duties with Delirious. By the next year, Cornette was gone. 6 years ago this week, on May 18th, 2015, NXT champion Kevin Owens made his Monday Night Raw debut, answering John Cena's United States Championship Open Challenge. This was 2 weeks after Owens' former friend turned foe, Sami Zayn, also answered Cena's Open Challenge in his hometown of Montreal and tore his shoulder, waving his arms around like a crazy man during his entrance. He got a little overexcited. Well, they were in Canada, and they had Bret Hart there to introduce him, so you can understand why he would be all amped up. He wrestled the match anyway with one bad wing. And here, Owens cut a promo on Cena but never wrestled. Instead, he laid Cena out with a pop-up powerbomb to set up a match at Elimination Chamber that he won. 2 days later, NXT held its TakeOver Unstoppable event from Full Sail University, which saw an excellent women's title match with Sasha Banks retaining over Becky Lynch, and Sami Zayn against Kevin Owens ending in a no contest. They worked his shoulder injury into the match. He did all he could. He was very limited in what he could do. It would be his last match before having shoulder surgery. This was the NXT debut of Samoa Joe, who walked out to confront Owens to end the show, debuting new theme music that absolutely did not fit his character. Thankfully, they had enough sense to change it. I don't know what they were thinking when they put it together. They kept the intro, which was fine. But once the main beat kicked in, it sounded like the fucking main menu music from one of their 2K video games. 4 years ago this week, on May 21st, 2017, hell froze over when the modern-day Maharaja, Jinder Mahal, claimed his first and only WWE Championship with a win over Randy Orton at Backlash, becoming the 50th man in history to hold the WWE title. It was a big enough deal in Canada that his name was brought up that week in a meeting of the Canadian Parliament in Alberta, where he was born. And Jinder at that time, he had transformed his body just physically. He looked completely different. Clearly this got the attention of Vince McMahon, who decided to pair him off with the Singh brothers and give him the big push, although more so because this company was just desperate to find a big star to market in the Indian market. That's really why they did this, most likely. One of the most shocking title wins in company history. Jinder held on to that thing for 6 months. Not even Shinsuke Nakamura could beat him for it. And 1 year ago, on May 23rd, 2020, Japanese wrestling star Hana Kimura committed suicide at the age of 22 after ingesting a lethal dose of hydrogen sulfide. She had posted images of self-harm on social media after receiving hateful messages online for an episode of the reality show Terrace House, which has since been taken off the air, that she appeared on. There was a scene that manufactured some drama, as most reality shows do, which makes this even sadder, the fact that she was doing stuff on the show that was heavily embellished for the sake of television, but people watch this and they think it's real. She had slapped one of her housemates when they washed their clothes without first taking out Hana's outfit that was in there, that she had worn for a match, I think her first match in the Tokyo Dome, and ruined the outfit. I believe the episode had already aired months earlier, but it was replayed, and she got deluged with hateful messages like, "You have such an awful personality, is your life worth living?" and hey, when will you die? Police charged one Japanese man in March with cyberbullying her, but he did not stand trial. Instead, the court fined him 9,000 yen, which is the equivalent of $80 US. They charged a second man in April who explained his actions by saying that he was simply joining in with the mob. He was joining in with what he saw others doing. He was just piling on. Hana's mother has started a nonprofit organization called Remember Hana, which works to spread awareness of cyberbullying. Fight TV just aired a Hana Kimura tribute show this weekend to mark the 1-year anniversary of her death. I will never understand what possesses people to target other people directly on their own social media account, because they want to make sure these people see it. So this isn't just going online and saying something mean about somebody. This is going directly to their Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever it might be, and saying the kind of things that they say to them. What kind of gratification does it give you to do something like that? I just don't understand it. And that is this week in wrestling history.